Welcome to Inevitable Wealth from Liberty One Wealth Advisors, a conversation around financial decision-making and events around the globe. In the age of instant information, level heads can be hard to find. Our hosts, Guilian DiLeonardo and Jacky Petit-Homme, provide objective and relevant insights to help you parse the data and block out the noise as you build your wealth. As managing partners of Liberty One Wealth Advisors, Guilian and Jacky look to empower you to develop an increased understanding of financial markets and how they impact you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of the Inevitable Wealth podcast. We are going to try to clear some air about some recent topics and misleading headlines that will come across your desk, your tablets, your phones, probably pretty frequently. But before, I'm Jacky Petit-Homme. I'm here with Guilian DiLeonardo. Guilian, how are you doing today?
Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you everyone for joining us. Today, very straightforward, right? You've heard a lot about the debt ceiling. It's all over the news. Wall Street Journal, CNBC, whatever your preferred method is. And today we just want to talk about, is it time to prepare your portfolio for a U.S. government default? So Jacky, what's happening now? Can you break it down for us?
Yep. So for those who are not aware, Uncle Sam borrows money to pay his bills, right? So Social Security, payments for federal employees, and what used to be a routine act by Congress, they would vote. They say, hey, we need to borrow more money. We'll raise the debt ceiling, and they'll vote on it and they'll raise it to the amount that they seemed appropriate. However, increasingly, as this act would happen, basically, it became more of a game, a dance, right? The Republicans and Democrats would try to use this as an opportunity to slide things into the bill because, as usual, they'll wait until last minute to get it passed. So now, currently, we have this thing going on between the left and right sides of the aisle, right? Biden wants to pass it with no, strings attached. Republicans want to, put federal spending cuts and restrictions on future spending. So they've been kind of going back and forth for a while now, and they're still in talks now.
Would you say is it close to being resolved? What have you seen?
So it's been back and forth, I'd say. It's been up and down seesaw. There was a lot of good posturing earlier in the week, and then it seemed like things were being productive, and then all of a sudden it was not productive, right? Each side basically raised how serious the others were, the other side was, but they still, remain opposed on some pretty significant differences. So it's putting them at odds. And, everyone, of course, disagrees what should be in the budget, what shouldn't be. So then, now we've got Biden and McCarthy going back and forth and trying to figure it out. But yeah, I don't know. Like, what's your take, Guilian? Like, do you think with what they're saying, you think they're going to, figure it out before the, what do they call it? The X date? The date?
I think it does get exhausting for regular folks, right, who are following along. As every politician tries to score political points, and they all love to get a little soundbite in. What really grinds my gears is when they compare it to a household, right? They're like that essentially the U.S. government has money go in, money go out. But the U.S. government is not like a household, right? It prints its own money, and its lifetime is infinite, right? Whereas for most of us, right, we're focused on monthly bills, maybe weekly saving, annual saving, whatever it may be. But our time period is very, very different. So that's my first thought, right, is that those sound bites get exhausting as they go through it. I think we've been reading a lot of research on our side. And for reference, Since 1960, Congress has acted 78 times to raise, extend, or review the debt limit. Long term, we're not expecting this to have material impact, right, on the market. It's always going to happen where they start this political posturing and go back and forth. But it's not the first time. It always feels like the first time the narrative takes over. And it feels like either the first time or the last time, right, where it's going to be so bad that it's, the whole thing's going to crumble. But we will get through it, just like we've gone through all the other news this year, last year, COVID, right? Everything comes up every couple of years as we go through it. I also have been reading a little bit from Cullen Roche, notable CIO at one of the funds we follow. And what he said is that there are even more tools available, right, to the president and the Fed to work around this, right? Specifically, right, he noted the 14th Amendment, which essentially makes it illegal for the US government to default, right? And once we're on the verge of defaulting, they have additional avenues such as, essentially printing more money, right, to offset, right, any debt limit that they would run into. So it's not the ideal scenario, but there are other avenues, and it's not something that we foresee happening. In your perspective, what have you seen? What's the timeline for this going forward?
So I keep hearing in the news that it's like June 1st, right? And I think it was just the way a lot of our minds work. We break down the year into these very cold, months, right? June 1st is when everything's going to go off the rails, but it really isn't June 1st. I believe, they mention of like they're targeting to get it done by June, but if June 1st is, because I just want to say this because, there have been folks that have asked me this question. Oh, if June 1st comes, they don't have an agreement, is the sky basically going to fall? And, probably not, most likely not. Like you just said, Julian, it's impossible. It's illegal to default. So for me, I think it's going to happen like the last times. I remember 2011. They got it, right in the 11th hour. So I think it's a lot of noise. It's a lot of posturing. I think, of course, we're going to see probably, like we saw a little bit yesterday, a little bit of that volatility, right? Because uncertainty makes folks scared. But as far as the timeline, I hope, and I'm pretty confident that both sides of the aisle have an aligned interest in actually getting this done. So whether, I know everyone in the House and Senate wants to win, right, which is the worst way to want to run the country, but hopefully they'll compromise and get this done so we as a nation can move on, right?
If there's anything that's true about the US government, it's that they wait until the last second to do anything impactful, right? Nothing can be proactive, done ahead of time. Another reason it's not like a household, right? Because they effectively do most things wrong until the last possible moment. But in this case, right, I think, June 1st, like you mentioned, is not a hard deadline. So that's important for people to note as they're watching the news and whatever they're seeing. It's going to be portrayed like, we hit June 1st, and if it's not solved, there's a problem. But there's nothing in place that makes that accurate, right? Other than the media narrative. So there is more time than that. It may be a week. You're not quite sure what the specifics are, but it is not a hard deadline as far as things go.
Yeah. So
yeah, good.
Yeah, sorry. So I was just thinking, what should people be doing on at least the short term and then the long term? Like what? So we see the debt ceiling. I'm sure I'm a little bit tired of seeing it, right? I wish they could just figure it out so we could move on. But the families we serve and everyone out there who's thinking about, their own, financial situation on the short term, Julian, what do you think folks should be doing?
I think very straightforward. And I was talking to one of the business owners that we work with yesterday. And speaking to him, I was noting, it can be a great buying opportunity should there be any volatility, because much like we said earlier, this will likely go down to the wire, right? At that point, you'll see maybe a dip in the market, could be, 5% or so, could be a little more, who knows, should it go to that exact wire. But it can be a good opportunity, buying opportunity. And what we've seen is in doing our research, and one other individual that I follow closely, Jeremy Siegel, specifically said there is zero chance the debt issue will not get resolved, even though there will be posturing and debate right up to the last minute before timelines are extended or the debt limit is raised. So this is something that he's seen. This is something that we've seen, and we fully expect it to get resolved. It's just going to be that game of chicken up until that point. In your experience, so what if, right, Jacky, doomsday scenario that when you turn on the TV, they want you to start thinking about what would you see happening in that situation?
So, and I think we saw it a little bit in 2011, right? We saw parks, right? National parks close, federal employees don't get their payments, Social Security, which is a big one, right? There's a large proportion of individuals that live in this country that rely solely on Social Security. Those payments would be impacted. U.S. Treasuries, right? So, the essential risk-free rate is tied to, federal government borrowing money, right? Like it'll impact really the world, right? So a downgrade to Uncle Sam's credit score basically probably wouldn't fare well for us over the long term. And also it likely like a drop in GDP or, a recession. Recession has been the word of the day for the last going on 18 months now. Of course, we'll see volatility like we've talked about. So the defaulting will permeate through a lot of different things, but a lot of the individuals we follow that, the economists, Jeremy Siegel, like you mentioned, there's a high degree of confidence that we're not going to default, right? We've seen this. What was that number, Julian? 78 times, right?
78 times, yep.
78 times. So as 79th time comes, it's going to be the last minute, and they're going to basically get it done. It's almost like the politicians are like college students. Like they know, right? Like at the last debt ceiling raise, they knew this day was coming, right?
We've
and
all
now
been there,
here we
yep.
are. Yeah. So, but and that's just the short term. So short term, we've been telling a lot of families we serve just to sit tight, right? Enjoy the day. Don't panic. Don't ruin your Memorial Day weekend with family and friends if you're traveling. But what about long term, right? Because this is very likely they're just going to kick the ball down the road. It's not going to go away. So, Julian, what should we be looking at, or what should we be preparing for the long term?
Yeah, like you mentioned, I think short term, sit tight. You don't mess with the reputation of the U.S., right? It's backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government, and thus should be resolved, not necessarily seamlessly, but in time. Long term, it's always, in our view, right, a healthy reminder to continue to diversify your future tax rates, right? Because the deficit, when we talk about it, it's not like a household, but right now tax rates are at historic lows, right? And that can mean it's a good opportunity to incorporate Roth conversions, backdoor Roth contributions, different tools to diversify your tax base. Because a lot of individuals, right, you hear a lot about asset allocation, right? You hear that essentially whenever you're reading any research. One thing that we focus specifically on often is asset location, right? Where are your assets? Are they in an IRA? Are they in a Roth, or are they in a taxable brokerage account? And how are you optimizing each account and continuing to diversify your future tax rates so that you can be more flexible, right? You have more optionality down the line. Is there anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would add, we're recording this on Wednesday. right before Memorial Day. So have a good Memorial Day weekend. Turn off the TV. Don't think about Speaker McCarthy or Uncle Joe Biden. Enjoy the lake, beach, or wherever you're going, and focus on anything other than the inefficiencies of our wonderful U.S. government, because they'll figure it out. Essentially, right? But yeah, I mean, nothing like that. Don't want to circle here, but thank you for ever listening. If I do want to say, there have been folks sending us questions of things to talk about. So thank you for that. We'll try to implement talking about those topics over the next few episodes. And yeah, that's all. Julian, anything?
No, that's it. Thanks everybody for joining us. I hope you have a great holiday weekend, and stay safe.
Liberty One Wealth Advisors is a registered investment advisory firm located in the state of Pennsylvania. Any options expressed are derived from sources generally believed to be reliable and are provided for informational purposes only. It does not constitute any form of advice or recommendation to buy or sell any securities, adopt any investment strategy discussed, or invest in any specific product. Nothing contained in this podcast constitutes investment, legal, tax, or other advice, and is not to be relied on in making an investment or other decision.